Good day everyone and welcome to another tutorial for the 4Anime series. Today we're talking about Defocus. Now if you guys follow the Exodus 7 to 12 KGV project, you'll know that I've been working with this defocus thing for quite a while. This one will be a 2-layer one. I found that the 3-layer one is good if you want to focus on something that's central, which is something you can build on your own based on this technique, but honestly and truly the 2-layer defocus is spot on, so we'll be doing that one today. So first of all, we need a few things which include objects to defocus from and to. So first of all, we're going to be adjusting our sun lamp. This is just my default scene that's a little bit modified to be more accommodating to a new setup. So let's add a cube. Let's take a cube, and let's say we want this cube to be our defocus object. So let's make it a little bit more interesting. Let's rotate it and make it like a fence. I'm just doing this on the fly. Okay, there we go. Just greater separation and boom. Okay, so there we have our little fence-like thing. We can see it within our 3D view. It's absolutely fantastic. And let's add a Suzanne monkey in the background. Let's add a landscape. No, let's skip the landscape. Okay, so Control 2, so we have a nice smooth Suzanne, and let's just give it a different color just to spice things up a little bit. So let's make that blue. Let's make this like a really, really bright green. So if we look at that, we put the Suzanne over there just so we can see her, and render. That looks great. Now, one thing I already did is I turned mist on, which is not something you need to be turning on. It's something we're going to be using. We're going to be using the mist pass instead of the Z pass, because the mist pass actually considers transparent surfaces. So let's say you added a fence here like I did for the tests. You would want your depth map to be able to focus through it. Basically, that's what it comes down to. So I'm just going to turn it off again, but we need to find out how deep this scene is. So in this instance, it's not going to be very deep. It's maybe 5 or so. So I'm just going to bring the camera down until we see exactly how much we need. Okay, we're going to be needing about 10. So I'm going to set that 10, and I'm going to set the mist to be a depth of 10 starting at the camera, 0. And the minimum you ignore as well. And the height you have to also leave at 0. Minimum means that that's the absolute minimum mist that it can produce. So it's allowed to produce for this instance, which means that you can have it be completely opaque, like right in front of the camera, which is really stupid, but you can do that. Okay, so we use a depth of 10, starts at the camera, and turn it off because it's going to be in the pass. So to include it in the pass, go to your render layer. I only have one because this is just an example. You can leave the sky turned on. Usually you would have a full scene, so we'll pretend that the sky is our full scene. Of course, solid Z transparency is important. If you don't have this turned on, if you have transparent stuff and you use Z transparency, it won't see through it. Unfortunately, the mist pass does not see through ray traced materials. So things like glass and stuff that has refraction, it's not useful. Just a heads up though, this works for Blender Render and Cycles. So if you're using Cycles, you can just set up something similar to this and just skip to the compositing section. You'll find an index in the description. So I'm going to be using the mist pass, and I'm going to be turning off stuff that we really just flat out don't need. Just so it's just that snap faster, you know. I think we're good. We've got depth, we've got a small render size so we can composite really fast. We've got some anti-aliasing so it looks nice. And we're good. So that is our scene. I think we need to change the monkey color just so it's not so similar to the background. The same with the pillars. So I want to change the pillars to be like a shocking red and the monkey to be yellow, or what about a dark green? Something super saturated, just a little bit on the darker side. That'll do. Okay, so obviously save often, save very often. Now you can go into the node editor. You have a few options here. You can stick with material index, which does not see through transparent objects, or you can use your mist pass. The great part about this is you just need 2 layers. All you need, just need 2 layers. So if your camera moves and whatever, you do need to keep a little bit of tabs on where the depth goes, because just like a real camera, if you move the camera, the depth will change. It's just one of those things. So let's check out our mist pass. That is fantastic. We want to isolate the monkey, and then we want to isolate the fence itself. You can use inversions of itself. It's totally up to you. You don't have to go big on this. So get a converter node, stick that in there, and now we set it to, you can use constant, not necessary, but you can use constant, and then you separate it out. So this will give us the fence first, most likely. Yeah, there's the fence. So when we see the Suzanne monkey, we know we've gone too far. Okay. So there is our fence mask, nice and strong. So you can do the same thing for the monkey, or you can simply use an invert node, which is the easiest, because the monkey will include the background. So let's just use frames so we can keep track of what goes where. So this one will be our foreground. So let's name it foreground. Okay, you can stick that in there. So now we can mask it because we need to fix it. The reason we need to fix it is because this mask alone is not good enough. It's really not good enough, and I'm going to show you why right now. So let's pretend that we're happy with this mask and we want to blur one section and we want to keep another section clear. Let's say we are going for something nice and intense. Let's go for 5. Yeah, you see that's a good example right there already. You see what happens over here? You can see this red glow. We want to get rid of it. It's not supposed to be there. The reason it's not supposed to be there is because it's not out of focus. We want the red to be in focus. It's the front object. So it can't be in focus and out of focus at the exact same time. Yes, sections of it can be, but not the entire object. And that's the problem over here. We want a super clear front and a super fuzzy background, and for that to switch. And for that to happen, we have to fix it. So this is what the masking is for. It's also for switching, but it's also for fixing. So to fix it, you need to add a separate RGBA node and combine RGBA node. You get both in the converter category. So separate and combine. So connect your R, G, and B, and our mask becomes our A. And I will tell you why in a second, but we just need our little image over there first. So if you look inside the viewer node and I do this, you can instantly see we have a problem. We can still see the green from the monkey. We need to fix this mask by blurring it very slightly and multiplying it or adding it over itself. In this case, we'll be multiplying it because we need it to shrink down. So what you need to do is you just need to take a blur node, set it to fast Gaussian. It's the best way to do it. It's just the quickest. 0.25. We take the mask and we take a mix node. We'll be using this one. You multiply it over itself without a factor, like that. And then you can stick that with a clamp in there and see what you get. So let's set it on something like 20, so it's nice and strong. And let's increase the blur to about... For this compositing, 1 will do, but when you're working with full HD, 1 is going to be way too intense. So when you build this in full HD, you're going to have to dial it back, okay? But for the sake of speed, we're just going to work with this. Yeah, we need to keep it like this. Okay, so this will be our foreground. It's already settled. This is our foreground. So what we need to do is we need to add a in-paint node, which is this other one over here. Now what the in-paint node does is it fixes based on transparency the amount that you want it to do. So see what happens when I click this. Okay, so I think 43 will be more than enough. Usually if you go for full HD, you're going to go for something like 150 or so just to be on the safe side. This is usually iterations, so it's not pixel related, but it is pixel related. Just use whatever is necessary for your particular resolution. So we're going to be doing a similar thing for the background, and I'm going to be showing you why. So you can take this one, mix it with the background. I think this one should actually be perfect because of the fact that it cuts out the red so well. Exactly. So that is great. We just do the same thing again. So we want this one, and this straight mask becomes our alpha. Okay, we just want it to be inverted, so that's my mistake. Let's just invert that. Okay, so let's bring this down instead. Okay, just so it's nice and together. Let's label this background, get another frame for that after we've put this stuff nice and together. Organization for something like this is key. Otherwise, you can easily lose track if you come back to it later and you're like, what in the world is going on? So let's take this one and call it background. And you can stick these in here. I have no idea what the blur node is for, but we'll use it for sure. Okay. So same thing again, adding that in-paint node. So get that filter in-paint. Awesome. What did we use? We used about 43, so 43 we'll be using again. See, we have a little bit of a problem here, so we need to actually fix the map. Let's use the same situation as over here, but obviously it would be inverted, or not. And it has to be inverted, but instead of multiply, it has to be added. Okay, so we're going to be getting a mix node and setting it to add, and of course we want this. Okay, let's just stick that in there and see what we get. Okay, yes, that's good. Oh, clamp it. Ooh, clamping it's very important. Otherwise you get values that exceed 1, and you don't want values that exceed 1 or go below 0. So let's get all this moved over. Definitely want it to be more than just that. Let's go for 20. 20 was good. You just want those red blocks to disappear. Okay, so now we got something we can work with. Now we've got our foreground and we've got our background. You can turn off the alpha values now. So let's say we wanted our background blurred. So now if we take a mix node and we take this blur node over here, that's already got our image there. So let's take the new background and stick it in there. Come on. And let's take our flat mask over there. And let's take our sharp foreground, which has already been fixed as well, and stick that into a viewer node. Now we get to, what in the world? think it's reversed. Yeah, it's reversed. There we go. I've got the blur on the wrong thing. It has to be on the background. No, that's again the foreground. There we go. So let's just set this down to 1 because 5 is a little intense. So you can see now that we no longer have that red fuzz problem that we did before. So you can see the difference between the two. So I'm going to quickly set that up so you guys can just see that. So basically that's it. So there you have your fuzz and your non-fuzz. It's either clean or it's ugly. You actually get to choose. So anyway, getting back on point, now we need to make it actually shift. The focus needs to be able to shift. So let's get rid of that. We have a clean result now. So now we need to be able to transfer this blur, which means that our foreground needs to be able to blur as well. So let's add a blur node to our foreground. And we need to add a blur node to our mix node, our factor. Okay, this is good. Now we can get a color ramp. This is to determine which way the focus is going to go. Because for one, the blur has to increase, and for the other, the blur has to decrease. Now to do that, you're going to have to reverse the same value. That's what the color ramp is now for. So it will be going, for the moment, into the size directly. And of course, one of these will connect there, but that we'll see as we go along. So we're not going to be concerned about that at the moment. So now we need to add a control. So let's say this is our control. Okay, this is our control. And if I stick this in here, and I stick that in there, you can see that that happens. Okay, so we definitely have we still miss that one over there. So let's see if it's this one. I think it's actually this one that's supposed to be in there. No, it's not that one. It's supposed to be this one. Yes, that's the one. So that if you shift it, you get that. Isn't that just the coolest thing ever? Now, the reason we have to also do this whole fix thing is because of this edge that we get over here, so that it doesn't get that background influence as well. It's the same thing that we had with the foreground influencing the background. It's not always necessary, but to make sure that whenever you use this technique that it is functional, do it anyway. We also have to make sure that we multiply this mask over itself, because we can see the stretching. Especially if you zoom in over here, you can see that the stretching is pulling on the image itself. So all you need to do is you just need to add this thing over itself, which is not difficult to do. Just add it over itself, clamp it, and you can set it at about 0.25 or something. It's not, doesn't have to be intense. Just has to be enough to compensate for the issue. Now, obviously, because it's a very low resolution that we're working at, it's not cooperating entirely as I want it to, but that's fine. So now that you have your two-layer defocus, now you need to put this into a group node so you can use it later. So all you need to do is you need to take these, and you need to make sure that there is only one image output coming out of here, so that we don't have to deal with all those multiple inputs when we're getting to the group nodes. And for the sake of efficiency, I'm going to be adding another separate RGBA node and connecting it to both of these because it's the same value. It just gives us a little bit more speed in the end. So separate RGBA, sticking that in there, taking it R, G, B, and R, G, and B. Now I can delete these two. So that's already reducing one node over there. And the fact that we only use one depth defining color ramp, we don't need another one. The thing is, you definitely want speed. So reducing the amount of nodes that you have is crucial. It's absolutely crucial. Just want to delete that. That's no longer necessary. This is our mix, so I'm going to make another frame and call this mixing. Mixing. So that's the mixing that comes together. Wonderful. Okay, so back to this image output, we can see that we still have multiple image outputs. We definitely want this little one going in there. So let's use shift and drag. You know, when you hold shift and you drag, it cuts these little strings. It helps to reduce the amount of outputs and inputs that your group node will have. See, we still have two image inputs. So for the sake of clarity, I'm just going to take an R over there and just stick that in there and remove the white. Okay, that's wonderful. Now I'm going to be removing this mix node so that we can replace it with an actual factor input. The reason I'm using this is so that we can actually use this factor value over here currently to shift the blur. You'll see what I mean when I put it together. So now that we have our little node together, you can take the whole group and press Ctrl G. And you can see over here we have the factor for our depth. We have the image that comes from the actual image. And then we have this one. Now I'm going to be using a factor here. So what you need to do is you need to take one of these and stick it into this point over there. Now, thank you. Stick that one in there. And then take this same one and stick it back in there. Now you can delete these two nodes. Now we have a slider that we can control from outside the group. So let's just rename these inputs so we don't get confused. The first input is our depth map or mist pass. So you can say depth map. The best thing is to not have this thing inside the node. Heads up. Let's give it proper names, and this would be the focus level. If you want to, you can add multiply nodes and math nodes to increase the blur strength. This is something I can actually recommend you do. I'm going to say add a math node in here, and we're going to say multiply by whatever the blur strength is. So let's take this little node over here to where the math node is. So let's add a one over there. So this will be blur strength. And that will go in there. Okay, that is good. Since this one that works with the foreground is the one that determines the blur of the mask, it's the one that gets to be 2 outputs. And don't clamp this. If you clamp this, it won't work because you need values above 1. Okay, that is good. Now you can take it back. Of course, I'm going to be adding this thing on the outer side of on the outside of the node. So let's just tab out, and let's just get this depth map reconfigured. Output viewer, and let's just change our depth. So again, constant, the monkey has to be excluded. Wonderful. And that becomes our input for the depth map right there. And since we have the depth map now, we can remove this block over here. So it goes from there to there, and it goes all the way into there. Like that. Now, if you want to, you can build in all sorts of safeguards like this to make it as sharp as possible. This thing does not function well when it comes to getting like a faded area to blur between. It's not something that slides very well. So don't even go there. So that is our foreground and our background. And those are our mixes. We've got a single output, which is absolutely fantastic. Okay, blur strength, focus level, all those things are great. Let's just get all this copied and put it over here and chuck this little viewer node. Okay, now obviously our focus level over here is currently halfway between the two, and our blur strength is very low. So let's set this blur strength at about 2. Now look what happens as you slowly move back. Look at that. And there you have it. It's as simple as that. Now all you need to do is you just need to make it less sensitive to your project resolution. So let's call this Defocus to layer. And in order to save this in your default project so that it doesn't have to be imported the whole time, so that Blender takes it into consideration, you just need to make it a fake user. So what you would do is you would open your default project, go to your node editor, like we are right now. You would append this node, add it, and then you would click on this F button to make it have a fake user. This would, if you delete it right now, prevent Blender from chucking it out as soon as you close the program. So right now it has a fake user. I'm going to save it, and I'm going to keep everything else except this thing in here. So I'm going to chuck it, and then I'm going to close it and open it again, and you'll see that it's still under groups. So back in Blender, groups, defocus to layer. So then you can take that over there, you can get your image all the way over here, stick that in there, and you can connect that. We have to render it first. Focus level has to be over there, and you can set your blur strength to whatever you want to. You can set it to 1, you can set it to 5, you can set it to 20, you can set it to 30, and you can see that the foreground remains stable and there is no red fuzziness around it. That's the whole point of this defocus setup. And that's also why we didn't clamp the multiply math nodes. Okay, this is a good example. See, you can see the further you blur it, the more you see this stretching problem coming to the forefront. That's why I said you have to just add the mask over itself to compensate for the stretching that you see. So usually I would use a value of 2 if my blur nodes are set to 1.5, the X and Y, these. If these are set to 1.5 over here at the mix, then using a value of 2 is really, really, really good. It gives you a strong visual defocus that forces the viewer to look at one thing versus another, except for brightness. And that's all there is to it. So the reason I have this one is because I'm working on Exodus 7 to 12 kJV project, and I needed a defocus node that was actually functional. So you can see right now the difference between what I get with the defocus node that's already in Blender versus what this one gives me. When God helped me put this together, I was like super excited. I was even on one occasion on the vlog going like, oh, there's no way to do it, no. And even while saying that, I got the conviction that no, there is a different way to do it, and God gave me the method, and now I got to share it with you. So I hope this proves useful to you guys. Have a great one, and God bless you.